epic Casebook. In which Inspector Carr investigates.
An item in my latest copy of the British Police Review seems to indicate that those who are paid to uphold the forces of law and order are the first to strike an all-embracing blow for women's lib. In February 1973, women police were completely integrated into the force. As from that date on, there is no separate rank structure. They come under the command of the heads of the division and special branches to which they're posted. Today, a woman may hold any post, achieve any rank. There's nothing to stop her, in terms of law, from becoming the Commissioner of Police. And this was not so in my days, although police women were employed in many aspects of crime detection. Sergeant Brenda Clifford was one. Alas, she died whilst on an assignment. Let me tell you about it. I've called my story The Plant That Died. I was totally unaware of Miss Clifford's existence until an old comrade of mine walked into my office. His name was Detective Inspector Percy Hannon, a member of the Vice Squad. Come in.
Oh, I'm sorry to disturb you, Chief Inspector, but it's
Percy Hannon, as I live and breathe. Oh, come in, Percy, come in. Sit down.
Oh, thank you.
It's been a long time. You still at the Vice Squad?
Yes, sir. And that's why I'm here.
What is it, Percy? You're looking...
Murder. One of our section has been stabbed to death. A call's just come through from the Albatross Club.
Oh, dear. Oh, well, let's have it.
Well, her name is Brenda Clifford, sergeant.
Policewoman?
Yes. And I'll never forgive myself.
I take it you sent her to the club?
Oh, yes, I did.
All right, Percy, let's have it.
Well, about 2 hours ago, I personally drove Brenda. Now, have you got the idea, Brenda?
Yes, Inspector, but I might not get the job.
Oh, you'll get the job, all right. Now, we've been monitoring their telephone for the last week. Those fake testimonials we given you should do the trick. This character Willis needs a receptionist who can speak French and German, who's living alone, and who is good-looking.
Oh, spare my blushes, sir.
According to a phone call made by Willis to the employment agency, they're getting desperate. So with a bit of luck, you should get the job.
I'll try my best, sir.
Oh, well, that means you'll get it. You're one of the best we've got on the squad. But don't forget, Brenda, don't try to phone the yard from either the Albatross or your flat. I know exactly when and how to report.
Yes.
Good. Now, I'm hoping I want you to start work tonight. And don't leave out anyone. I want the names and the description of everyone who comes into this club, all right?
Okay.
If our informant is right, the Albatross is where it's all happening. Now, nearly there. Now, these characters play for very high stakes, so take care, Brenda. Take very great care. I'd hate it if anything happened.
Don't worry, Inspector.
As soon as you finish your interview, walk out of the club. If you've got the job, open your bag and do something with your hair. But if it's no dice, just start calling for a taxi. One of our men will be watching from the window we've been using to keep an eye on the club. Okay?
Okay.
Yes, I'd better not turn the corner. Look, I'll drop you off here. And that's the last time I saw her alive or dead. I'll never forgive myself. Oh, if I could just lay my hands on those...
Why, see, you ought to know better than that. Now, let's get down to basics. I take it you've just received news of her death.
Yes, it just came through from the information room.
Well, it's now 10 minutes past 9. You said you drove Miss Clifford about 2 hours ago?
No, a little longer than that. Her appointment was for 7 o'clock.
Which means that she got the job. If you dropped her at the club at 7...
Oh, she got the job, all right. She gave the appropriate signal. And that's the last I heard.
Well, why did you want this policewoman installed in the Albatross? What were you looking for?
Currency. According to the Treasury branch, millions of forged lira, francs, escudos, you name it, was pouring into the country. Interpol informed us that a man who was fatally wounded trying to break the police barrier on the Czechoslovakian border was found in possession of all sorts of forged paper money.
Huh?
Well, in his delirium, he kept mentioning the Albatross, something about the roulette wheel. Well, now you know why we installed Brenda as a receptionist. But I feel as though I personally murdered her.
Oh, come on, Percy. You ought to know better than that.
Operations?
Oh, ops. I want a car at West Wing. I want 2 sergeants, half a dozen constables to accompany me. We're going to the Albatross, where the killing was reported.
Very good, sir.
I don't know whether you agree with me, Percy, but I think we ought to handle this as we would any other murder. In other words, not divulge that the victim was a member of the force.
Well, it's over to you, but I want to be there, and I want to lay my hands on those...
On who? Oh, don't be silly, Percy. At the moment, it looks as though Sergeant Clifford got wise to something hot, and the racketeers got wise to the young lady. Now, let me get hold of the killers, and then your department can get to work.
Well, yes, all right. I'd have rather the entire financial situation had collapsed than to have sacrificed this wonderful girl's life.
Look, I understand exactly how you feel. Now, just leave it to me. Now then, I want a list of all your suspects, those you think were smuggling in forged money.
Can I help you, sir?
You, Sergeant, take 3 constables, guard that side. You do the same over there.
Right, very good.
Now, you were saying...
Oh, terrible. It happened at a club like this.
What's your name?
Jolliffe, sir. Tom Jolliffe. I'm the manager.
Oh. Well, a young woman has been murdered, and everybody seems completely unconcerned.
Well, we haven't told anyone, sir. That was the boss's orders.
Oh, what's the name of your boss?
Willis, sir. It's a Mr. Kenneth Willis.
Where is Mr. Willis?
Well, I'll take you to him, sir.
Has anyone left this club in the last 20 minutes?
No, sir, no. This place doesn't really start swinging till about 11 o'clock or
Where's
so.
the body?
Still lying there. Of course, we put a tablecloth over her. That's all we had. Well, that was the sergeant's suggestion.
Is he with the body?
Yes, Gunner. Seemed such a nice girl, too. This was the first time...
Never mind that. Take me to Mr. Willis.
All right, sir.
Is there a back entrance?
Oh, yes, sir. By regulations.
One of you men go round the back, guard the rear entrance, admit anyone, but don't let anyone leave.
Right, sir.
Now,
Oh, no.
you say...
Here is Mr. Willis now, sir.
What? Oh.
Mr. Willis.
I thought I heard something unusual going on. I take it you're from the police, and these men belong to you.
I wouldn't phrase it like that. That's the general idea, Mr. Willis.
I'd have given my right arm for this not to have happened.
For goodness sake, what's going on here? If you're making a movie or something, I'd like...
Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a serious accident. No, look, I'll take you all into my confidence. A very serious crime has been committed. It'll be our duty to question everyone here. Now, if you'll all remain seated and carry on with your gambling, you need not be unduly inconvenienced. A member of the force will take your name and address. Perhaps you may have observed some trifling incident which could be of value to us. Thank you. Now, Mr. Willis, first of all, I'd like to take a look at the body.
It's not a very pleasant sight.
Well, we're getting nearer to ugly sights in the murder squad, Mr. Willis. All right, Sergeant, remove the cloth.
Sir?
Brenda Clifford was lying on the floor of the narrow corridor skirting the gambling room itself. She lay with her arms outstretched, her face seeming to press into the pile of the carpet, almost as though she was in an act of embrace. Even death could not rob the body of its loveliness, even the bread knife that had been plunged into her back. Do you recognize the bread knife, Mr. Willis?
And that's the first thing I asked my staff, yes. Yes, I do. It's come off that tray.
I see. Now, further along this passage is the ladies' room, is that right?
Yes.
And all these heavy draperies. Doesn't require a great deal of imagination to see what happened. Have you any theories, Mr. Willis?
Well, it's quite obvious what happened. Some swine hid behind one of these drapes after picking up a knife from one of these serving tables and waited until Miss Clifford was going on to the ladies' room, and as she walked past, plunged the knife into her back.
Yes, I think that's a reasonable account of what took place. Now, Mr. Willis, who would want to do a thing like that?
Well, search me. I hardly know the girl. None of us knew her. She had an appointment here.
Oh, what for?
Well, I needed a receptionist. I asked the London Employment Agency to find me someone. She arrived at 7 o'clock. You say you can speak and read French, German, and Spanish?
Yes, that's right. If you'd like to try me out.
I take your word for it. One or two of my waiters will have a chat with you later. One thing worries me.
What's that, Mr. Willis?
Well, let me be frank with you. This is a gambling club, one of the best in Europe, and that means one of the toughest.
Toughest, sir?
Well, as much as £100,000 can change hands in one night. People are inclined to get excited. Language gets a bit blue on occasion.
Well, that wouldn't worry me, Mr. Willis.
These testimonials seem first-rate, but what bugs me is why you want to come and work in a gambling club. I mean, a nice girl like you with all these languages.
Well, you see, Mr. Willis, when Daddy was alive, I didn't have to work. I don't know any typing or shorthand, and... Well, I thought I'd get a job as a hotel receptionist where my languages would be useful. But, well, then I thought this kind of job seemed more exciting.
Oh, you'll find this exciting, all right. There's just one thing. A club employee has got to learn to hear nothing, see nothing. There are an awful lot of gentlemen who come here to gamble when their wives think they're away on business conference. You got the idea, huh? Tact. That's right, miss. Smile. You smile like that, and I've known some customers give as much as a £5 tip.
Really? Just for a smile?
Just for a smile, kid. And one other thing. This is a high-class club. I'm sure you're a nice girl, but we don't encourage our young ladies to make dates with our patrons. Do I have to spell it out for you?
No, sir. I get the message.
Right. It's now 20 minutes past 7. Are you ready to start work?
You mean I've got the job?
Yes, kid. The job's yours.
But
what's worrying you?
Oh, well, I suppose you want me to wear something different.
Oh, yes, of course. Go home and put your glad rags on. But nothing too sexy. We like our customers to keep their eye on the cards or the roulette wheel.
I understand. What time do you expect me back?
8:30. We're not open officially till 9 o'clock. I'll introduce you to Tom Jolliffe, the manager. And that's exactly what happened. I took her into the gaming room, introduced her to Tom, and never saw her again.
You mean you never saw her alive?
Yes, that's just what I do mean. I'll tell you this. If I could lay my hands on the person who killed my new receptionist, I'd personally tear him limb from limb.
There was no doubting the ferocity with which Kenneth Willis described what he would do to the killer if he laid his hands on the culprit. It was a remarkably fine piece of acting, assuming the owner of the Albatross was acting. I then questioned the manager. Now, you were introduced to Miss Clifford at what time?
Close on 7:30, I'd say.
And what happened? Did you tell her her duties?
Well, yes, sir. I showed her where the customers' hats and coats go, and how they have to sign the club register, and how to hand out chips where...
Including the ladies' cloakroom?
Yes, as you can see, sir. We're not a very big club. We're highly exclusive.
What sort of food do you serve?
Well, only like snacks, sandwiches, cold meats, that sort of thing. Everyone has their dinner before they come here to gamble.
And who was at the club at 7:30?
There's no one except me and the boss.
So, you showed Miss Clifford around the club, and then what?
Well, sir, she said she'd got to go home and change, and I didn't speak to her for more than, 5 minutes.
Yeah, but later. What happened later?
Oh, she came back at 8:30.
Oh, I thought I was going to be late. I ran back for my raincoat just as I left my flat and started to team with rain.
Well, it looks as if it's still raining. Let me hang it up for you, will you?
Oh, the place seems deserted.
Oh, Mike's in the kitchen, so's Fred. Well, Mike's the chef, so-called, and Fred's the waiter. The Dakeman and croupiers don't arrive until 9:15. She's got plenty of time, so don't worry. In fact, if you go into the kitchen, probably Mike will make you a nice cup of tea or coffee.
Oh, that will be marvellous. Where's Mr. Willis?
Oh, he never gets here before 9. Now then, take your raincoat off. Let me help you, will you?
Thanks. Well, I'll go and get that cup of coffee.
Sure now. She came to this kitchen. It made my heart glad just to look at her indeed. That's a terrible thing.
Do you recognize this knife, Mr. Flynn?
Oh, why shouldn't I, Inspector? I put the knife on the serving table, but... Boy, the saints, I never thought...
Mr. Flynn, this girl was stabbed to death between 10 minutes to 9 and 9 o'clock. We've taken statements from everyone here. No one saw the girl go to the ladies' room. No one heard the poor girl cry out. And yet, someone picked up that knife. You hazard a guess, Mr. Flynn. If you were asked to name the suspect, who would you say was the likely killer?
What are you trying to do, sir? You're trying to get me to put myself into the grave. Who else could it be but either Mr. Willis, Mr. Jolliffe, or Fred the waiter?
That's a pertinent question, Mr. Flynn, but why did you pose it?
Well, now, sir, the men's room is right on the other side. If it were any of the customers, he'd be seen leaving the gambling table. Would he not now?
Yes, Mr. Flynn, he would. And yet no one seems to have seen anything. Now, the girl walked from the reception desk, which is at the entrance to the club. She had to turn left before entering the main gaming room, turn right down the passage. She must have walked past Mr. Willis's office, and it was between your boss's office and this kitchen that someone hid behind a drapery and pounced, less than 10 yards from here. Are you sure you heard nothing?
Not a thing, sir. So help me.
Some more customers, all right, sir. What shall I do?
No, send them away. In fact, send everyone home. Nothing more I can do here tonight. Oh, just a minute. Sergeant!
Sir?
I want a plan drawn of the premises. Oh, I don't think it'll help much, but I also want the table and the knife examined by Prince.
All right, sir.
Now, as soon as everyone's signed their statements, they can go.
Very good, sir.
Does that mean I can go too?
No, not yet. I haven't taken a full statement from you yet, Mr. Flynn. What you can do is make me a cup of tea. Perhaps Mr. Jolliffe would like one.
Well, as I'm having an early night, I think I'll get a cup when I get home, sir.
Oh, I don't think you're going to have a very early night, Mr. Jolliffe. You see, you, Mr. Willis, and I have still got a lot of work to do. Mr. Willis, I have a warrant here authorizing me to impound all monies found in your office.
What? What has money got to do with this girl's murder?
Maybe a great deal. Now, open up, please.
I refuse. You can't...
All right, you two. Hello. The time has come for us to put our cards on the table, as you gamblers would say.
What do you mean?
The murdered girl was Detective Sergeant Brenda Clifford, a member of Scotland Yard.
What?
No, listen, Inspector. I don't know with no murder. No, I wouldn't...
Shut up, you fool. Inspector, do you think that either Jolliffe or myself murdered her?
Are you going to open the safe, or do you want one of my men to do it for you? Can't you see that the less cooperative you are, the more you become branded as a possible murderer?
You'd better open the safe, Governor.
May I see your warrant?
Certainly. Here.
Whoever stabbed this girl has nothing to do with this club.
My. It's an awful lot of money. Most of your punters seem to lose very heavily. All right, Mr. Jolliffe, start counting. I want you to be a witness as to the money we remove.
What has the money got to do with Miss Clifford's murder?
Let me have a look at that 10,000 lira note. Even my untrained eye can tell it's a forgery.
Do you mean that one of our patrons has palmed off a forged note on us?
Oh, come off it, Willis. I said I'd put the cards on the table, and I will. Detective Sergeant Brenda Clifford was planted here tonight in order to obtain evidence proving that this club is a clearinghouse for forged currency smuggled into the country.
You can't prove
That's
it.
the good, Chief. The copper's been murdered. You go on talking like George Sanders, and we'll both have a noose round our necks.
You shut up, you fool. Now, Mr. Carr, we cannot be responsible if our croupiers and deckmen can't recognize a forged note.
Look, you think I'm a child, Mr. Willis. Don't you think that I would first ascertain the modus operandi? Money doesn't change hands at the table. The money is exchanged for chips handed out by your receptionist, the girl who was murdered. Is that why she was killed, Mr. Jolliffe?
I was in the gambling room all the time, and I can prove it. But you can't prove where you were, can you, Chief?
You're even stupider than I thought, Tom. Chief Inspector Carr, you know quite well that the rear entrance was open, that anyone could have walked down the alley, entered the club without being seen, dived behind the curtain.
Mr. Willis, our policewomen are chosen because of their impeccable background and personal life. Who would know that there was an entrance in the rear, kept open while the club was in use? Or for that matter, who would know that Detective Sergeant Clifford was working in this club?
You've been asking a lot of questions, Mr. Carr. Let me ask you a few. How would I know that this sweet young woman who looked as though butter wouldn't melt in her mouth was a copper? And if I did find out, would I be foolish enough to murder her? At the Albatross? Telephone the police? Wouldn't I have got rid of this money first? Not that I admit to knowing that there's some forged notes among them.
Won't wash, Mr. Willis. It's what's known in criminal jargon as the double take. It's because we were likely to ask such questions that you committed such a brazenly open act of murder.
I tell you, you're making a very great mistake.
Possibly, but I'm impounding the money and pulling the two of you in for questioning. Carr?
Operations, yes, sir.
Yes, Ops.
The plainclothesman keeping the club under surveillance testifies to seeing Detective Sergeant Clifford entering the club at 7:30 exactly. Photographs are taken of the 11 people entering the club. All of them are named by Interpol.
Good. They all been rounded up?
Yes, sir.
Well, we've broken the currency racket, if nothing else. Trouble is, I've still got Willis and Jolliffe in the cells on the murder rap.
Well, you think they were in it together, sir?
If they were, Ops, it's one of the crudest gang killings I've ever come across. Oh, come in.
Beg pardon, sir.
Oh, it's all right, Ops. Detective Inspector Hammond's just walked in. Has Mr. Clifford been informed of the tragedy?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Ops. Hammond.
Well, our informant was right about the Albatross, eh?
Quite a clever racket, that. Bring the money in, pretend to lose it on the gaming tables.
Yes.
Oh, cheer up, Percy. If you go through life remaining convinced that you were responsible for this young lady's death...
I planted her, didn't I?
Look, we're fighting a war, Percy. A war against drug pushers, white slavers, killers. Of course you planted this nice Brenda Clifford in the enemy camp. Would you have felt the same had it been a policeman instead of a woman? You'd have been upset, angry, but not sentimental. You do this girl's memory an injustice by sentimentalizing her death.
Oh, maybe, but she was in my squad, not yours. Well, it's up to you now, Chief. This man, Willis, Yes, he's your man, and he'll employ the cleverest crook lawyer he can find.
Look, let's not jump our fences until we get to them, huh?
What do you mean?
Well, let me show you one or two dockets. Now, the handle of the bread knife was wiped clean. Now, Willis or Jolliffe needn't have wasted a precious couple of seconds doing that. No jury would find their prints evidence of guilt. They were at the club.
What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say that Fred the waiter, who seems to have a clean record, and Flynn, in charge of the kitchen, who seems to be of unblemished character, had the same opportunity.
Oh, now you're talking nonsense. Why should they?
Why should they, indeed? But a defense lawyer is going to say to Willis, you'll have to admit to your currency racket. And then he'll turn round to the jury and say, is it feasible that a shrewd international racketeer like Willis would commit murder at the very spot where his record is likely to be exposed? Why did they send for the police? Why couldn't they have secretly dumped the body in the river or something?
What's got into you, Carr?
These boys will go down for a few years for their crimes. But I don't want a murder conviction unless they're guilty.
But what about the girl? What about Detective Sergeant Clifford? Look, a sweet girl goes into that club out of the rain, hangs up her raincoat, and in a matter of minutes is stabbed to death.
Oh, which reminds me, we have all her possessions and her clothing. Her father will be visiting the yard this afternoon. Do you want to hand over the stuff?
Oh, no. No, you're right, I am sentimental. I deal with vice, fraud, currency irregularities. I haven't developed your hard skin.
Particularly as you saw quite a bit of her, didn't you, Percy? I mean, outside the call of duty.
What do you mean?
Apart from those swines running the Albatross, you were the only one who knew that Brenda Clifford was going to work there that night. You and our agent, keeping watch from the window opposite. He knew because she gave him the signal that she'd got the job.
What is this?
The officer let you know that Detective Sergeant Clifford was engaged. I then began to wonder about you, Percy. Got X-branch on the job. You stopped seeing Miss Clifford outside duty hours, didn't you? I was loath to see you as a possible killer. Where were you between the hours of 8 and 9 o'clock? I'll tell you. Our man, keeping surveillance, saw you drive up alongside the Albatross. I banished the possibility from my mind, and then you said something just a moment ago. I'm arresting you, Percy.
Well, you're talking nonsense. Look, you'll never make this stick.
You're a senior officer. It's not my job to make anything stick. I leave that to the Director of Public Prosecutions. But we'll probe, and we'll ferret. And if you're guilty, you will be punished.
Do you mind if I go to my office? Clear up a few things.
Instinct told me what Detective Inspector Percy Hannon was about to do. Yet I thought it the best way out. Not for his sake. He was prepared to see two racketeers punished for his crime. My instincts were right. Carr?
Operations here, sir.
Yes, Ops.
The Assistant Commissioner presents his compliments, sir. Says that before Hannon shot himself, he signed a confession. It'll be kept in Y branch, sir.
Fair enough. Well, he saved the state the trouble of charging him. What's more, I think we would have had a dickens of a job proving his guilt.
Sir, tell me, sir, what was that in his confession? It says a short sentence exposed his guilt.
Oh, that. Well, you see, Ops. It was the raincoat. Do you remember the killer said,
a sweet girl goes into that club out of the rain, hangs up her raincoat, and in a matter of minutes is stabbed to death.
Now, how did he know that she was wearing a raincoat, unless he'd been lurking on the premises? The poor besotted idiot allowed his passion for the girl to turn him into a killer when Detective Sergeant Clifford told Hannon that she was getting engaged to another member of the force. It turned him into a murderer. Oh, yes, there are always black sheep in every group of people, even policemen.
Inspector Carr Investigates, with Hugh Rouse in the title role, is written and produced by Michael Silver. Listen again next Thursday night as Inspector Carr Investigates.